Well, are we scratching where you're itching? Are we touching on things that are kind of getting you to think about stuff? This is definitely just a shotgun approach. I mean, just know that it's saying, let's touch on a bunch of stuff, and boom, and you guys kind of pick. It's kind of like a buffet, and you get to pick what you think is applicable, and some of these are basic things. I tell people all the time that the things that we've learned from kids, when I back up from kids and I find out what's going on, please hear that it's not just trauma that happened at a church camp or a young life leader that can't keep his hands out of a little girl's pants, or somebody's killed in an accident. We do take those kids. But a majority of our kids are just struggling and having a tough time. They're making poor choices. They've grown up in great families. And the litmus test for that is for coming to Heartlight. We get 12,000 inquiries a year. I think I said that last night. But the litmus test, do you think your child's going to be around in 6 months? Is it going to get better or is it going to get worse? And so we ask those questions, and we're not a dumping ground either. We're not a dumping ground for people to go, I don't want to deal with my child. And adolescence is tough. It's tough on parents as well. But we do a couple of things. I'm going to back up here to this. It's a family and crisis conference. And before you would ever consider sending your child to come live with us, I would tell you, come to a family and crisis conference first. And this is limited to 30 or 40 people. You get to spend a couple of days with us, get to come to my house, and I'll cook you the best steak you've ever eaten in your life. And it's helping people kind of, here's some things you can learn in dealing with your issues, and because there's some commonness about kids who are struggling when you get back to the core and say, okay, how do we deal with that stuff? And so what we're going to be doing is spending time saying, okay, let me tell you a little triangle here, and that's what we're going to do this next hour, of how to work on some of these things. So take advantage of the Family and Crisis Conference. 95% of those people who go to that never have to send their child to a program anywhere. And so that's how I spend my life, is helping people not ever have to send their child to come live with us. And Jake mentioned that last night. The other thing is just sign up for our newsletter. And the newsletter will take you, I said I want you to have resources. The newsletter will take you to our Parenting Today's Teens site. That'll be new, I think, next week. That is full of resources. And there's even a family and crisis course. It's called Family Crisis Course. .org that you can get on and watch. When COVID hit, we started doing these Zoom calls of family crisis conferences, Zoom calls, because people weren't traveling at the time. And we'd have 400 and 500 people participate with us in these things. And it was just crazy. And then we said, okay, everybody pay $25 and you can participate, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just, who cares? Everybody just come and be a part of it. So we filmed it, and then we put it out there. It's a family crisis course. You can go watch that course for free. And it's because some people watch it and send in $5,000 that it allows us to do it free for other people. So take advantage of those. And we probably have about 10 other courses that are free that you can get to. There's also, the newsletter is free. The Facebook, we post things on Facebook. You can follow us there, and we always let people know what we're launching. The other is the mobile app. The other is a YouTube series that is called Heartlight Stories. And it's really when I interview kids, if you listen to the podcast, and I'm interviewing kids, the guy who's the director of The Voice TV show comes and films me doing that with kids, and he takes it and edits it and produces it and loads it up, and that's his way that he pours into Heartlight, is by doing that for us. So take advantage of that, but you're really able to see the kids, not just hear the kids, and it does make a difference if you're a YouTube person. The other thing is our podcast. I would tell you to take advantage of our podcast. It's a 5-day release podcast, and just like we'll answer questions, there's a piece of it that's I must ask Mark a question, and it's been somewhat crazy, the response that we've had off the podcast, with about 100,000 downloads a week now on that thing. we just joined, I think I mentioned this yesterday, we just joined the Christian parenting platform and are going to be kind of the premier group on their platform, and they're going to be pushing us, and they got 10 million downloads this past year. And so we're always, oh, you finally get out of the bathroom? Man, that was a long morning, wasn't it?
Sure was.
What'd you have to eat last night? I mean, was it some of that stuff over there? Yeah. It's good to have you, man. Good to have you. And so so I tell people all the time, go to the podcast, and you can listen to radio stuff, you can listen to all that stuff, but Christian radio is great. Do y'all have a Christian radio here? Do y'all listen? Does anybody listen to radio here? Listen to us? Do you? Yeah, I can say things on a podcast that I cannot say on Christian radio. Like there's some things that I would say here that I've said here that I wouldn't say on Christian radio, because it'd be bleep, 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 you know, and they're always stopping me going, wait, stop. Mark, you can't say that on radio. And I'm going, yeah, but it's the truth. But you can't say it on this. And so that's where on the podcast I get to cut loose a little bit more and say what's true. So take advantage of the podcast. And so we're always saying and coming up with new ways, whether it be podcast, radio, courses that we produce, books that we give away to people, anything that I do, I want it to be free to people. If you're a single mom and want to come to a family and crisis conference, it's free to you. And courtesy of the Texas Rangers, not the shoot 'em up Rangers, but the losers. And the people that aren't doing near as well as we want them to, kind of thing. And so take advantage of those things. And I think you'll find something, even articles on the Parenting Today's Teens website. There's 1,000 articles there that I've written in addition to books. It's not just a peddling site for books, but it really is saying, how can we help you? And you have a child that's cutting, you have a child that's anxious or on meds or struggling through things that the gender issues that have come up, all that other stuff, then we address those on different things. We don't, the gender issues right now, we don't publish on radio, and I don't talk about it a whole lot on a lot of stuff because the gay mafia comes after you. Right now, they will just attack anybody that says anything. Matter of fact, one of the books back there, Raising Teens in a What's Happening to My Teen, we republished the book, and I tell two stories of two kids that that are very dear to me, that were with us years ago, a gay girl, a gay guy, and love them to death. They're great. They each have married, same sex. But I tell the story of what I learned from them as a guy who came out of the world, telling fag jokes all the time. And so so I put it in there, and I just said, let's talk about that. We took it out of the book just because of the volatility of people right now. They'll go after anything, and they made us out to be a gay conversion camp and mentioned it on 2020. And I'm going, if there's a gay kid out there, they want me on their side, to help them through and help their family through things. So we are hardly a gay conversion place. I mean, they said, well, you pray the gay away. No, we don't do that. If I knew what that prayer was, I would have used it on Jake a long time ago, but I didn't have the opportunity. I couldn't help that. I'm sorry. So if you can't find it on a radio program, you might be able to find it in a podcast. You can't find a podcast, maybe an article. Can't find an article, it may be in a book, and that kind of thing. So just, it's multifaceted, but take advantage of it. I want to talk, really for the next 45 minutes, and then I'm going to switch over to the part of it that's tough guy drama queens, even though we've covered a lot of it. And I would use this, just write these 3 circles down, and you'll kind of get it here. And I think I've said that this circle that's right here is the relationship circle. And I've said this over and over again, that your relationship is the key to figuring out what's going on in the life of your child. You don't have a relationship, you don't have a connection. You don't have a connection, you'll never get to the heart of the issue. And then those people mainly just want to tell me the rules, just tell me the rules and how we manage behavior. And you can do that. I'm not good at that. My deal is, how do you create rules so there's not chaos, that provides the setting and creates a setting where you can dive into kids and deal with the real issues in their heart. That's where I want to get to. That's where I always want to get to. And so even in my comments that with you guys, I'll say what's needed to get to the heart of the issue and use the language that I need to use to get to the heart of the issue to make the connection. And I just feel like when you're in Rome and the kids that I live with, I'm going to say what needs to be said and bring it out on the table. And I'm one of these open guys that says, let's talk about anything there is. I think we hide in relationships sometime. And this is where you've got to spend some time and do this self-reflection, where you're asking yourself the question, what is it about me that is keeping our relationship from going deeper? And I think we get this idea that it's all our kids' fault. And part of it may be, but a lot of it may be that you haven't adapted to the needs of the child. You know, I mean, ask Jake and Carol this, that when Josie came to live with us, there were adoption issues that we needed to help get her through. One of those issues was she thought I was an 80-year-old man, you know, a little idiot. And she thought I was an 80-year-old man. I'm going, why do you think I'm an 80-year-old man? And then I began to realize that in Rwanda, there aren't any 80-year-old men. And there's sure not any gray hair. I was in Ethiopia. It was interesting. I was in Ethiopia last year, and I realized nobody has gray hair. Really, nobody. I don't know why. They don't live long enough. That's why. You know, and so she was looking at me as that and thought I was some old coot that just couldn't relate with anything. And I had to look at it and go, okay, what is it about me that's keeping her? Why does she not feel comfortable with me? She just didn't feel comfortable around men. For whatever, I don't even know what those reasons were, but I began to realize this isn't her deal, this is my deal. You know, it's the same thing when your child is spending all their time on their phone. I do this with my granddaughters, and they're sitting there just, I always ask the question, am I boring? Am I boring? Am I not doing something I should be doing? Why do they think that it's more important to be on this thing than spend time with me? And I don't look at them, I'm going, you know, you idiot, you need to figure out that I'm important in your life. I ask myself the question, what is it about me that you don't want to spend time? What am I doing? Or what am I not doing that I should be doing? Am I antiquated in my way of engagement? You know, am I not figuring? There's times that I've sat down and I've gotten my wife's phone and I've said, here, you use that, I'll use this one. And we text the conversation back and forth, sitting at Starbucks across the table from one another. And I mean, it's a wonderful discussion. Kids will say things in a text that they won't say, you know, verbally. I mean, it's amazing. I try to keep it all in. I use this phone to make sure I'm connecting with people. My granddaughter sends me this. My dog got excited about seeing me yesterday. Hey, listen to this girl, Megan Maroney, who was up for Artist of the Year last year. God plays a Gibson, Girl in the Mirror, Mustang or Me. You know, and hey, Papa, where are you right now? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? Hey, you bought me an airline ticket. Can I change it, or is it going to cost too much? I mean, I just want to know. And then I send her stuff that's just funny. You know, just funny stuff, and we make that connection. I work hard to make sure I'm connecting. I work hard. You know, when I was like 20, I thought, okay, I'm at my prime. You know, I started doing the Young Life stuff. Then I worked for a church for 7 years, and I thought, surely by age 30, it's going to be over with. And, you know, just the flair that you have with people. Then I thought, well, surely by 40, it's gone for sure. And by 50, nothing. So, yeah, I'm 68 years old. I have kids wanting to spend time with me now more than whenever I was a youth minister leading a youth group of 500 kids. I mean, we'd have young life clubs back, in the 70s where we'd have 5,000 kids show up for these things. And I mean, it's just crazy how people gathered. But it's funny to me how now they want to spend time. And it's because they're looking for something. They're looking for somebody that has an ear that'll listen. They're looking for wisdom that'll be shared. They're looking for somebody that'll ask questions and get them to think, that will love them for who they are, who will just listen long enough. And if they ask for something, I'll give it to them. But, they're longing for that. And it's almost, that's what you want to create at home. I want any kid, I want my grandchildren. My kids don't want to spend any time with me because I don't like them as much. But I want my grandchildren to want to spend time with me. And so I have to create it. I have to work at it. Because if not, I'm going to be eliminated. And so the same way with any kid. If I don't work at it, I can't expect that I'm going to walk in, because kids aren't that way anymore, and they're just going to come running up to me. Oh, hi, my name's so-and-so. You must be Mark. They don't do that. It just doesn't happen anymore. And there's a reason. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So I have to ask myself the question all the time, what is it about me, that is just not making the connection? Because that's my responsibility. I can't change them, but I can change me. So I try to figure that out. And I know at some point I'll give that up. I don't know when. I don't think it's soon. I hope it's not soon. But I think one day it'll be gone. And that's where you make the disconnect and you're drooling over in a corner, pooping on yourself. But there's a part of me where I'm going, what is it about me? And I think this is where you say, Lord, search me, know my heart, and see if there's any hurtful way in me. It's my daughter, when she was, we went through some things, and she's probably a mess because even though she does all the admissions at Heartlight, and she's wonderful, and I gave them some land next door to us, and they built a house, so they live next door. But the only reason I did that is because I wanted to spend time with my grandkids, and I don't allow them to come over. I allow the grandkids to come over, but I don't allow my daughter or son-in-law to come to our house. Put up a big fence and didn't give them the code, and so stay away. But I work hard on that, and I try to figure out how do I do that? And what I found was, and this is between my wife and I realized that, because she's a big scriptural lady. She knows scripture. Jan studies everything. She studies everything. I don't. So they come over, and my wife will want to share all these spiritual truths with them. And this is what I learned, and this is what, they don't care what she's learned. But she's wanting to kind of have an outlet for her stuff. And I'm going, and she asked me, why do they kind of shun me a little bit? And I go, the God thing is a little bit too strong, sweetheart. That's not where they're at. So it's okay to back off, then let them come to you. And so Easter, she floods them, not with chocolate and everything else, but it's almost like she's rewritten the Bible, in a card and given it to them. And they're going, oh, wow, that's neat, Let's go on an Easter egg hunt, and you see what I mean? And my deal is there's no rules at our house. I'm not going to tell you what you're wearing is out of line. I've got two beautiful granddaughters. I'm not going to tell them what to wear, what not to wear. I'm not going to say you can pierce this, Matter of fact, my granddaughter that's 17, she's a volleyball player. She's going to play college ball next year, and she got a tattoo right here. She says it's a cross. I think it's a plus sign. And I go, what, are you going around telling everybody that you're good in math? Is that what it is? And she goes, no, it's a cross. I go, it doesn't look like a cross. I said, turn it this way. Now it looks like you're good in math. And so it's like you're a math teacher that loves the Lord. And so it just doesn't, and so then she came to me and she said, hey, Papa, you're not going to believe this. I got a tattoo. And I go, another one? Yeah, she goes, and she has it right here, and it says, I'm enough. I go, enough of what? What are you enough of? She goes, well, I'm just enough. Well, I'm going to get a tattoo that says I've had enough, and I just go on, I try hard to make the connection and laugh about stuff and shut up when unless I'm asked to give insight or something. I love it when my granddaughter came to me and she goes, Papa, can we go sit down and talk? Love to. Hey, tell me what you want to talk about. I got drunk last weekend. She goes, that's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? Well, aren't you mad? Why would I be mad? I mean, it's almost, this is your deal, sweetheart. Why do you need to tell me? Well, I just feel like I need to because of our relationship. I appreciate that. What do you mean to do? Punish you? You mean to punch you? You mean to, what do you mean to do? Tell me what you want to do. I love you, sweetheart. Nothing's going to keep me from loving you. But there was something about it. It's interesting to me when you create the atmosphere. She would never have sat down with my wife because my wife would have told her all the scriptures that would make her feel guilty and you need to change. That's not what she needed. And so it's almost putting it in the right context. And my wife wrestles with, she does really well when they're younger. But when they get to the teen years, they just don't spend a whole lot of time talking. I mean, one will be in talking to me and you know, Jan will walk in and kind of dominate the conversation and eventually they just get up and leave. Okay, am I hitting the nail on the head with some of these? Sometimes if we just sit back and listen, we create that atmosphere. And that's what I learned from my daughter telling me, Dad, you never listen. You always have an answer. Well, because I do. No, not really, but I really feel like I do. But it's just learning to break the habit and not sharing it. So I have to ask that question here. What is it about me that's keeping that from happening? And I asked Jan the same thing. What do you think it is about you that's keeping that from happening? You know, and she goes, well, maybe I talk too much. You do. Maybe I interrupt too much. You do. You know, and I go, but we all do something, hon. And you got to figure out what that is, you know, so that you can draw people to you. And this is what I want. I want kids coming in. It wasn't me that invited the girls over to eat tomorrow night. It was the girls coming to me, can we come over to your house and eat? That's what I want. Can we get together? Can we sit down and talk? Can we do that? And it's by saying, what I've learned is that listening piece of it makes all the difference in the world. And so this is where I am going, I didn't do it with my kids. Perhaps they wouldn't have gone through what they went through if I would have listened to them. I was too busy spending all time with everybody else's kid. But what can I do in this circle to change my relationship? The only way to do that is to ask. I admit where I've been wrong. Dad, you're such an a-hole. Okay. That's what your mother's been telling me for 25 years. You know, but there needs to be a place to say that. Because you'd be the godliest person in the world and treat your kids like crap. And they're looking at it going, well, how come you're not that way to me? You talk about this, but this isn't the way that God, you know. And my point of it is the relationship becomes key. And I would say this, and I don't think it's blasphemous, that the key relationship that they need during their adolescent years is the relationship they have with you. The relationship with Christ becomes secondary in my book. Because I know in time, because of what's been done over here, they will get to a place where they start asking questions. And if I don't have the relationship with them, then I'll never be there to speak truth into their life at the time that they need it the most, to kind of guide and direct them when I let them start making decisions and they start messing up and they struggle through things. I want them to have that example that's before them, so I'm not spending all of my time just trying to shove something down their throat when they're not really hungry. Are you following me on that? I'm telling you the importance of relationship. You know, and that's where I go back on Scripture. I read Scripture, and the importance of relationship is key. Scripture is all about relationship. So that's what we ought to be focusing on. I think there's two things that last in this world. Two things that last. It's the Word of God and relationships. And so those are the two things that I want to focus on. But it's the Word of God being poured into me as an example to them. And so it keeps me from having to do all the things that made me successful down here to now say I can make some changes. And so if I keep shoving things down their throat and doing things wrong and saying things, or I tell people all the time, I'm sorry. 26 years ago, I yelled at you and I shouldn't have. 30 years ago, I did this and I shouldn't have, and I was so wrong. That may be it, that we don't like to admit that we're wrong at times. And when you do, you open the door for something to happen. It was funny, and this is no joke. My son-in-law has been treating me like crap for 9 months. And I'm not so sure why, because we've been talking, I think it's probably because we're talking about succession for me and who takes over stuff, and he's not it. Neither is my son. And I hired somebody else that I think probably will be. So he's been treating me like crap. And so I had this dream the other night about how I was going to cut him out of everything. Okay, do I have to get a divorce to not leave anything to my daughter so that he gets some of it? Or I'm joking, folks, a little bit. Not really. I was thinking that. And so how can I leave something to her and not leave it to, I just thought, I am tired of being treated like this. I am tired. And that's what I was thinking is I'm just tired. I'm trying everything. I'm doing everything. And so I kind of came into our weekly meeting loaded for bear. And I sat down, and the first thing he says was, I need to tell you that I'm sorry. I am so sorry. For what? Just the way I've been to you. I am so, changed everything like that. Just like that. And when you do the same thing to your kids, you go, I am so sorry. I haven't been who I've needed to be to you. I wronged you in this. You're right, I never listened to you, and I haven't, and I don't do well at that. I want to do something different. It's the question that she asked is, am I a listener or am I a talker? And, well, you talk a lot. This is what she was telling me, but you're more of a listener now. I said, so here's the follow-up question. Go back to her and say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 of being a listener, where would you rate me? Well, a 6. Then your response is this. Then my goal is to be a 7 over the next few months. And will you tell me when I get to be a 7? Are you following me? And so what I'm trying to do is counter maybe the damage I've done by not doing everything right, because I don't do it anyway. I admit it. I go to him and say, I know this has been a thing between us, and I know I'm that way. I know I'm like this all the time. I know I'm that way, and I don't want to be that way. And you admit it. I'm obsessive compulsive. Did I mention that last night? I'll ruin relationships with obsessive compulsiveness. So much to the point, I didn't go up in my son's room for over 3 years because there was crap everywhere. And I was just going, okay, either I'm going to have a son that has a nice room and I have no relationship, or a trashed out room that can be repaired one day or destroyed, and have the relationship. I had a man in Austin, Texas, come to a fundraiser that sucked. I mean, we didn't raise 1 penny because he had a daughter with us, and he stood up, and he looked like ashes and smelled like smoke, and he said, Mark, I need to tell you something. My daughter committed suicide. She's 24, committed suicide, and 3 months later, my son committed suicide. But they had clean rooms. Follow me? Is that clean room more important? More important than a life? And that's where I'm saying, what is it about me that is destroying my kids? If the culture is so bad and it's awful, and we've all said that, and it's pathetic, what are we doing to cushion that, to create a place at our home that is a place of rest? When Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and you'll find conviction for your soul. He didn't say that. You'll find rest for your soul. So if it's so intense out here, what am I doing to change the intensity? That's where I said it was stupid I think, for 8 and 9-year-old kids to have a phone. But I'd recommend it. I don't like it, but I've got to change. Why do I have to change? Because culture has changed. The nature of kids have changed. I've got to figure out what's important and what's not important and say, how do we make sure we're offering our kids what they need desperately to survive? If you're picking up your child at school and you pick them up and they get in the car and, hey, how you doing? Good. What'd you do today? Nothing. What do you want to eat tonight? I don't care. What are you going to do after dinner? Whatever. They are a kid that is bombarded during the day, and the last thing they need is for you to bombard them when they get home. You have got to stop and back up and create a place of rest. Are you following me on that? Because if not, they'll find rest somewhere. And I'll tell you how most kids will do it in Oregon. They'll go on vacation because they're being driven there because everybody needs rest. You know, that's why you have the second and third glass of wine sometimes. You know what I mean? It's because you need a break. You need something to get your mind off of everything. I've got to ask myself a question. Am I a part of that that's creating the havoc? Perhaps my child is wrestling with anxiety, and because I know culture's not going to back up, I need to back up. I need to let some things go. I need to stop having demands that I have. I need to quit being in control, making all their decisions, doing everything for them, and partner with them and say, let me walk alongside you and help you as you get through this time. What am I doing? And the other thing is learning this is how to love them. You know, we get this idea. We recorded all of our radio programs for about 8 years at Moody Radio in Chicago. And so I'd fly up, and every 2 months I'd be in Chicago. We record I don't know, somebody listening to the radio program today, I have no idea what it was about because we recorded it 2 months ago. And so we record them in advance, and they said, hey, there's a show that's on. It's Dr. Gary Chapman. He's written the book called what? The 5 Love Languages. You don't know what the 5 love languages are, then you're not a Christian. But everybody knows what those are. And it's quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and touch. And here's the thing, I don't want you to come mow my yard. I don't want any of your gifts. We got so much crap I'm trying to get rid of that it's crazy. I really don't believe in words of affirmation when you do public stuff because you get just as much on one side and the other. I don't have any time, because I spend time doing this. I don't have any time, and I don't want you to touch me. And so there's those 5 love languages just don't have anything to do with me. And so we're in Chicago, and they said, hey, there's a show. When you come up in a couple of weeks, there's a show, Gary Chapman, he'd like to have you as a guest. And I go, well, that'll be great. And so as y'all take a break at noon, he's on Moody Radio, and Moody's on, that show is on, I think it's called the Relationship Hour or something like that, is on at noon. And would you come in and do an hour show with him live? And so Chris Fabry is the host. He lives in Tucson, Arizona. I'm in Chicago. And Gary is in North Carolina. And so between that, they make it sound like you're in the same room. But you're not. You're 1,000 miles apart and carrying on this thing. And so I walk into the studio, and I just said, okay, I'm here. We take a break. Everybody else is gone. And they said, well, here's the script we're going to go off of. And I go, I don't do scripts. And they go, well, Gary really likes having his show all lined out, and he likes scripts. Yeah, but okay, I'll do scripts. And you can tell I don't do scripts. You think these slides are for you. They're not. They're for me. They kind of keep me on track. And so I said, okay, we'll do the script. And so music comes on, and Chris comes on. Hey, folks, welcome to the Relationship Hour. I'm Chris Fabry, and here's our host, Dr. Gary Chapman. And Gary comes on, and Gary, and Gary just kind of goes, Hey, welcome, folks. We have a special program today. We have a guest, Mark Gregston. Mark, welcome to the show. Hi, Gary. It's good to be here. Well, you're in Chicago. Why, yes, I am. But you're from Texas. Why, yes, I bet you have boots on. Why, yes, I do. Ha ha. And I mean, we're going through this list, and I'm just getting bored out of my mind. I mean, I found myself thinking, if I could just find a fork right now and give myself a root canal, this may be a better experience. And so I'm just going through, and he's going, well, you have horses, don't you? Hey, yes, we do. But you, and I'm going, so after about 10 minutes of this, I said, Gary, let me ask you a question. Let me just ask you a question. And Chris jumps in and goes, Mark, it may be best that we kind of stick with what we're talking about. I said, I know, but I think your listeners would love to hear the answer to this question. And so Gary goes, well, Mark, what is it? And I said, well, Gary, this is the question. Do you think there's more than 5 love languages? And he goes, he goes, I've kind of encapsulated them all into these 5. And I go, I know, but we used to think there were just 9 planets. I mean, Pluto's in, Pluto's out. Pluto's in, Pluto's out. And I go, do you know how many planets they've discovered since 1995 when your book came out? Matter of fact, the first year they discovered the first exoplanet was the year that your book came out. But do you know how many planets they've discovered? And he was like, no. And I go, 2,598. Isn't that crazy? 2,598, when we used to think there were just 9 planets. They've never had me back on the program. Never. But what I realized was, there's more than one love language. And if you think that you're loving your child by those 5, this is what I was brought up on, because every Christian knows what those 5 love languages are. This is, I'm going to love my child. I'm going to give them gifts. I'm going to touch them. Words about, you're so good. You're great. You're wonderful. Here, let me comb your hair. Let me trim your toenails. I mean, whatever it is, acts of service, let's go spend some time together. And your child's going, let's not, and so it's just one of those, you surely what if your kid hates every one of those? Then God would call you to think out of the box. And what he's saying is this, don't lean on your own understanding. Remember that scripture? And we get this idea, this is how it's going to be, and maybe it's not going to be that way. Maybe we've learned, maybe we picked it up. Maybe we were parenting because of the way we were parented. I parent because of the way I wasn't parented. No joke, my dad died last June. No tears were shed in any of our family. And it wasn't because it wasn't sad that somebody died. I'm sad because anybody dies. It was just because there was no relationship, and there never has been. And so it's a part of it that you kind of go, okay, well, maybe we got to think differently here, and maybe my kid isn't loved this way. And so maybe I'm missing it based upon what I think I need to be doing because of how I was parented or how I wasn't parented, or some book that I've read, or somebody told me that this is what it looks like. What if it's not those things? God says, think out of this box. Don't lean on your own understanding. I mean, my 2 love languages are this. I want to be defended by those people that I've been loyal to. There's nothing that affirms me more than when my wife says, Mark would never say that. And I say stuff that's a little edgy and over the edge. But when she says that, I go, when my daughter says, Dad would never say that. No, that's not true. When my son says, when anybody says that, is that warms my heart. And the other thing is this. I want to be invited. I'm not going to show up, but I want to be invited. There's an affirming thing for me when somebody writes me and invites me to something. And so, but I'm not going to go, but I want to be invited. When you limit your kid, and just on a side note, when you limit your kids to not having a phone, and the number one thing that they want is just to be invited to things, And you know this. Where do people get invited now? Kids, off of text. And so that's where they get invited. They don't have text. They don't get invited. So that's one reason. But I think those are every kid's at least two love languages. I think we're loved in a number of different ways. So I wanted to write a book called The Other Love Languages. Moody won't publish it, though. And so I asked the question, is it me, or am I doing something that I think is right that's really not right? And it's not because it's not right in what I think. It's not right because that's not what my child wants. Well, I'm preparing the greatest meals in the world. I'm preparing the greatest meal. They don't like any of the food I'm serving. Then how do you move toward your child? Prepare the food that they want. Now, don't hear me, well, give them mac and cheese, let them fatten up really good. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's almost a word picture of saying, let's provide them with something that they're longing for. And it is figuring out and don't text them, go, what is your love language? Well, what does that mean anyway? I mean, that's kind of hard. That's not something you go, I'm going to share that with them. Men have a different love language, like sarcasm. Sarcasm is a man's love language, as long as it stays within men. You get women in there, it screws the whole thing up, Food may be a love language. Sex is a love language. It's everybody's got different love languages and different people at different times. And so I think the key is trying to figure that out more than anything else. What am I doing, and how can I do something different that appeals to my child so I can be that one that they want more than anything? Everybody with me on this? Second circle here is this structure, that you develop a sense of structure, and it's real easy. Does somebody have that book, Developing Rules and Consequences, sitting on the table? Do you have it? It's at your kitchen table. There it is. Just hold it up where you can see. That's the workbook. That's where this structure comes in. And then basically what this book says is the workbook. It helps you kind of formulate some of this stuff. And it says this, that and I would ask you the question that you would hopefully find the answers to. What do you want from your kids? When they turn 12 and 13, what do you want from them? If you have a situation that's spinning out of control, what do you want? What do you want? Maybe the reason you're getting angry, let me say this. If you are getting angry, you're not getting what you want. And so what that means is you got to figure out what's making me angry. And that will point to what you want. And you say, these are the things I want. And you may want different things. I just want you to take your meds. I want you to, maintain at least a 2-point. I want you to not drink and drive. I don't want you smoking pot. I want respect within the family. I want you to treat others with whatever it is, whatever you think is important. Those are 5 things that you want from your child. Just 5. Dads, it's got to be more than 1. Dads are, don't get drunk, don't get pregnant. It's got to be more than that. Moms, it can't be 150 things because nobody will remember that, but just real easy stuff. If you'll just do these 5 things, then I think we will have a fantastic and wonderful relationship. That becomes key. And so it's asking, what are those things? Do you know them? Have you ever listed them? Because if you don't know what they are, your kids sure don't know what they are either. And so that's where the expectations get lost. This is what you'd like to see. And what you do is say, this is what we want. And if we don't do that, then there's going to be a consequence to it. I don't want you to drink and drive. If you do, we're going to take away your car for a month. Then the second time, we're going to sell the car. Third time, you're going to rehab. And just line it out. It depends on what level it is. Now, you don't say this to a 6-year-old, It's not going to work. It's all got to be age appropriate, right? I want respect within the family. And it may be that respect is how you treat other people, how you treat siblings, how you treat the house, how you treat something that's not yours, how you treat your mother. This is the thing. You're going to respect mom. And if you don't, you're going to lose your cell phone. Second thing, I'm going to make you eat your cell phone. I'm going I'm going to plug you into the wall. You know what I mean? It's you get their attention by the amount of pain that they go, I need to think twice. Now, there's a part of consequences, but there's also a part of carrots also down here. And I'm not sure why I say this and this, other than I'm going to differentiate between this is what I want from you, and this is what I'll do for you. If you do this, where there's consequences, then I will give you this. And this here may be whatever's going to motivate your child. Will your child quit smoking pot for $1? No. Will they for $10? No. Will they for $10,000? Probably would. And my point of it isn't that you offer them $10,000, quit smoking pot, but there is a point where the benefits outweigh the sacrifice. You following me? And it's so I want to put together whatever it is to get them to quit doing the things that they're doing up here, or the things that I want to see different. And so it may mean that, I don't care about music. And let's say it's a 16-year-old, okay? Then I'm not going to care about music. Listen to any music you want. And you have a pair of Beats that, you know what Beats are? Headphones or whatever, or the new Atmos stuff that they're coming out with, Atmos recordings, that you slide those across the table. I'll give you these. And that's probably $300-$400 pair of Beats. And this, I'll pay for your gas in your car for the next year, as long as you do this stuff. And you slide a card across that has, every month I'll give you a new card. And it has whatever they need, $100 on it. Now it probably needs to be $500. Whatever. I don't know what gas is out here. Texas, we make our own in our backyard. And so, so I'm going to slide that across. And I'm going to give you money where you're going to start taking care of buying your own clothes, take care of activities, it's your allowance, pay for things at lunches at school, and pay for whatever. And I'm going to give you that money. And if you're paying for their car insurance, tell them they have to pay it and add whatever you're paying car insurance into that and slide that across. Do it in $1 bills. So they see a big stack of bills, and it may be $300-$400. And they're going, I mean, if I do this, I get Beats and this, and I get $400 a month to spend? Yeah, because you spend it anyway. I mean, think about what you spend on clothes and everything for them. You spend that much. And then whatever it is going to get their attention. It may be that you slide a pair of car keys across, and you go, I'll give you a car. If you can do this, I'll give you a car. I don't owe you a car. I don't owe you anything. I want to give you everything. But because I'm giving you everything, I'm asking for something in return. And you do that. I mean, so you give the money, and you give it to your daughter, and your daughter comes home the next day. She's got $300 in her pocket on the first of every month. You put it in a checking account, not a debit card. If you're a finance guy, debits and credits. They're going to have to learn that eventually. That's all it is. Give them a checkbook. Say, I'll put $300 in your checkbook. And when your daughter comes home on the second of the month, and she's wearing this pair of jeans that is just ripped to shreds in all the right places, and it's embroidered and bedazzled and everything else, you go, sweetheart, look at that. She goes, look what I did with $300. I bought a $300 pair of jeans. You know what your response is? That is a great looking pair of jeans. And they go, really, you think so? Yes. Man, I wish your mom had a pair of jeans like that. That is unbelievable. Oh, that's cool, Dad. Yeah, that's neat. She starts to walk off. She goes, oh, by the way, hey, can you spot me $50 for gas? 'Cause I don't have any money. Nope. What am I supposed to do? I have no idea. What would you do? Haven't thought about it. Well, that puts me in a spot. Well, walk to school in those jeans. You think she's going to do the same thing next time? Nope. So what am I doing? Giving her the opportunity to make decisions. I'm letting her feel the effect of her decisions. And it's like when she came back, whoever came up to me earlier, and where you have a mom that where the daughter says, you're not going to help me? Well, that's not being a good mom. No, it's being a great mom. because you're switching and you're allowing them to make decisions. So I'll know it. I mean, but I'll continue to give you this. But if you do any of this up here, that is your choice. So if you lose the car, that was your choice. What are you doing? I am giving you responsibility for your life. You chose it, not me. You agreed to it because you said that you would go by this if I give you this. So you chose to lose the car. You chose to go to rehab. You chose to smoke pot and lose this. You know, I would even go down to the point that if you do this, I will pay for college. Where do they want to go to school? Put that brochure and slide it across the table. I'll pay for it. You can't do this, I'm not paying for it. But that's your choice, not mine. Are you following me? So now I have a child that goes, I'm going to do this because I know that I'm going to lose a lot. So when they're out drinking or they're out smoking pot or doing whatever, they know I can't do that because I'm going to be tested. And if I do, I have so much to lose, I'm not going to do it. So what are you doing? You're creating an atmosphere of relationships, an atmosphere where you know that your child will be thinking freely. We take kids that have been smoking pot every day, 2 or 3 times a day, you know, for a couple of years. And I know it's going to take 2 or 3 months for their head to clear out. You know, they need to pull their head out of their rear end and get some fresh air, is how I've always looked at it. Then they'll start thinking right. And when they start thinking right, now we have this atmosphere of relationships. And I know that kids are going to change because of the relationship. They're not going to change because of the exertion of my authority or the things they've been taught. They're going to change because of relationship. Are you following me on that? So this becomes key, and that kind of lines it out when I say, we want this from you, I will do this for you. And you've got to make it attractive enough. Okay, so I'm working on the relationship thing here. My messaging is changing. I have an understanding. It's changing my heart the way I look at kids. I'm changing the way I'm approaching them. I'm admitting the things I'm doing wrong. I'm sharing with them things where I messed up. I'm creating more of an imperfect environment that makes them feel more comfortable. I'm going to give you control. I want you to have more responsibility. I want you to make decisions. But here's some of the boundaries. To him whom much is given, much is required. And this is what I'm requiring from you. Now, the third thing, you can do the first 2 things, not do the third one. This isn't going to work. But the third thing over here is dealing with the issues. What are the issues in your child's life? Can you name any of them? If you have anybody of y'all have adopted kids? If you have an adopted child, I'll tell you what their issue is. We've had 1,300 adopted kids live with us. Every one of them's like this, is that they feel like they've been abandoned somewhere. And they feel like they've been abandoned. And I was given up at a time. A lot of kids feel this way about divorce as well. That dad didn't want to stay around. I wasn't worth staying around, so he left. And so I've been abandoned. So that means somebody gave me up and didn't want me. So here we come into and we give them the answers. Well, you're in a better home, you're in a better place, you're in a better this, better that, and that's fantastic. And then we try to tell them the same thing here, and it doesn't work because they move from concrete thinking here, now they're moving to abstract thinking. And the difference is this. When they get here, they start thinking, wait a minute. The answers you gave me, yeah, I'm in a better home, and I was, you say rescued out of a place, but wait a minute. Now I'm doing this princess brawl thing in middle school where people reject, the world's imperfect, nobody likes me, and they're making fun of me. You know, and I was abandoned at the same time, so maybe nobody likes me. And the kid that's abandoned has a grid, and they interpret everything through that grid that I was once abandoned. I was once given up. It's kind of like when I got fired from a job. Somebody says, how did you start Heartlight? I started Heartlight because I got fired from my previous job. And it hurt me so much to be fired from the job. I didn't do anything wrong except say, this is illegal. You can't be doing this anymore. That they said, we're going to get rid of you. And it hurt. God, it hurt. For 10 years, it hurt. And so I would interpret everything coming into me as a sense of rejection. Jan wasn't saying things to reject me, but I sure interpreted that way because of the rejection that I've felt. Are you following me? So an adopted kid feels that way. So then they start to ask the questions, why was I given up? At a time that they don't feel like they belong. At a time they may be a different color. At the time they may look different, feel different, act different, have different medical things. And so they look at life differently. It's like the kid from the World Trade Center Dad died over here when he was 5 years of age, and we're going to have to get a new home. Mom's going to have to work. You're going to have to take care of the dog. You're going to have to be dad to your little sister at 5 years of age. And he goes, I'll step up to it. I'll do it. Because it's concrete answers to the difficulty in life. And he moves here, and now it's abstract. And he's thinking, my dad's never going to see me play basketball. My dad will never be at prom. He will never meet the girl I marry. He will never hold my grandchildren. He's moved from concrete thinking to abstract thinking. And when you start doing that, now it's a whole new world of problems. And you begin to think, wait, but it's grief all over again. And that's what's happening. But if I just go, I'm going to control it, I'm going to fill that void in relationship. It's not filling the void. Like I said with the Stitch book, it's not filling the void. It's learning to live life with voids. And I have this structure. I got to deal with the issues here. This kid is thinking differently and feeling different about life. And I've got to make sure we're taking care of these issues. And the issues may be so much that that is what's causing the behavior to spin out of control. That a parent gets to the point, if my child continues to do this, they're not going to be around. And so that means that I'm going to make sure that he's meeting with a counselor. He may need to be on meds to help a kid get through anxious times, depressed times. It means I need to spend more time with them. I need to ask those questions that are more in depth. I need to figure out where they're confused. To do that, for you to figure out where a kid is confused, you have to admit where you're confused. But if you have it all together and are perfect and know everything, then you're not going to be, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good to your child who wants somebody that can relate with them in some way. Are you following me on this? It's a huge transition, but it means this: I have to deal with the issues that are in my life, in my kid's life. Whatever that is. They feel rejected all the time. They feel like nobody loves them. Nobody cares for them. They feel like they're not worth whatever. If you have a child that doesn't feel like they're worth, they're interpreting, and I mentioned it last night, they're interpreting that golf is more important to you than them. That going to a Bible study is more important than them. If they have these worth issues. And so it's saying, if they're feeling that, I want to deal with those issues. And it may not be you that can help them. It may be a counselor that does that. It may be a doc that can help them with anxiety. I still say the anxiety thing, it's not necessarily a passing thing, but a child will usually mature out of that and get to a point, unless they're really hyperactive and attention deficit, they'll get out of it because they'll grow those tools that can manage life by itself. Because they're so immature, they're not as mature as they used to be, as we talked about last night. It just means that I'm going to have some coping skills that are going to get me to a different place. Follow me on that? Got to deal with the relationship. Got to deal here with, truly with the structure and how we're putting things together. And I've got to make sure that I'm tackling the issues that are happening here. You follow me? Okay, let me finish with this before we take a break for lunch. Lunch is $45, and what is it, like a tenderloin, or is it like a sirloin, or? That's at your house. Yes. What are we eating for? What are the steak cuts that you get at your house? Filet mignon. They're the best steaks ever. Well, thank you. How long does it take for you to cook them? 10, 15 minutes. But I'm not sure what that has to do with anything here, but I want to. No. What are we having for lunch? I don't know. Oh, well, that's good. The guy who runs the thing doesn't know what we're eating. So we're having Mediterranean or turkey. Oh, sandwiches or salads. Okay, that's perfect. Oh, that's wonderful. That's why nobody asked me. Now I don't know where I'm going anymore. We wanted to be on Moody Radio before we started recording there, of course, but we wanted to be on, and Moody is a very strict and probably very conservative radio. Have any of y'all heard of Moody Radio? Moody Bible Institute. It's that, very strict. If they had a sound that would be their motto, would be, that's how conservative they were. And so we wanted to be on their radio programs. They have like 80 or 90 programs across the country, stations across the country, and all have morning shows and all that. And so we were appealing to them. There's only 48 spots on radio because there's half-hour programs, and so there's only 48 people get on. The only way you get on is after you pray that somebody dies and gets off. And so it was one morning while we were praying that a couple of these guys would die, so that we would be invited on. That they called and said, "Can you come and be a part of? We'd like to test you out and see if we want you kind of in our program lineup." And so I said, "Well, that'd be fantastic." So we go to Chicago, and they said, "What we're going to do is put Mark on the air during live time and see the response that we get. Put him on at 6 o'clock in the morning, and him and the host will talk about kids in general. And then at 7 o'clock, we can take calls from the public, 1 million people listening to this program. And we'll kind of see how that works and all." And so our guys from LA that's producing the program, they come out. The people from Longview that we're involved with that help us do all of that, they're there. And all the radio people from Moody Bible are there. And so they're on the other side of the glass. And so let's say this is the other side of the glass, and everybody is sitting there on the other side during the time that we're talking about kids. They're just sitting there. They're just sitting there drinking their coffee, looking up, listening to the discussion that we're having, and everybody's kind of talking among themselves. It must be 20, 25 people out there. And they're just talking, and I can see them as I'm engaging with the guy who's the host of the program. And then he says, "Mark, we're ready. We got Stephanie on the line. She's going to be asking a question, and we'll come back after this break." Okay, what you need to know is that the day beforehand, there was a news story that came out about a pastor that lived somewhere that was very anti-homosexual, very anti-homosexual. I mean, constantly like this. And everybody knows what this is, right? You know what that is? When somebody's like this, he was just constantly preaching anti-homosexual, 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 anti-homosexual. And then leaving on Monday and going up and having a relationship with a gay guy up in another city 90 miles away. And then he'd come back, and then that week he'd preach against it, and this went on for 3 or 4 years. And so went on for 3 or 4 years, and finally the guy that lived somewhere else outed him and said, "I've been having a relationship with the pastor of this church for 3 or 4 years." And so this man, I knew him because he served on the board of directors for the National Association of Evangelicals that I was serving on the board at the time, I knew who he was, but he ended up losing his church, almost losing his family, lost his credentials, basically, lost his influence, almost lost his wife. And it just was this mark on Christendom that I was going, another red mark in the column, that is just negative, and I always look at how it impacts kids. So anyway, this guy goes back and he goes to a number of leaders. Some of them you would know who they are just by their name throughout the country. And he went to them and he said, "What do I need to do to restore my relationship with my family and church and people and all this stuff?" And they said, "You need to do this stuff." And so the big issue was, well, is he gay? And but you need to go do this. So he did that. He went to everybody. And he went through counseling for 3 or 4 years, went through the whole deal, and finally they came out on the day before I did the interview on Tuesday morning, and the big deal was, is he gay? And they came out, and his counselor, you would know who his counselor is, everybody would, they came out, the counselor said, this man is 100% heterosexual, which was the big issue. Is he or is he not? And they came out and said he's 100% heterosexual. Are you following me so far? Okay, so the Wall Street Journal carried it on the second page, USA Today on the fourth page, SRN News, which is satellite radio news, came out and said, this man, they pushed the story, and anybody in radio knew, this man is 100% heterosexual, okay? That was the story the day beforehand. Big news, huge news. Everybody's wondering, like People Magazine, what happened? Well, this is what happened. And so 100% heterosexual. And so now the first question comes in, and it's from a lady named Stephanie. Everybody's on the other side of the glass evaluating me, going, do we want Mark on our radio program, on our radio stations? So they're all looking and stuff, and I said, well, so they came back from the break, and I said, well, Stephanie, sweetheart, tell me what your question is. And she goes, well, I got a question for you, Mark. Are you 100% heterosexual? And it was almost like everybody on the other side of the glass just goes like this. Our producer, stuff started to go in slow motion. It was going in slow motion, and all I saw him, I kind of looked up as she was asking the question, he went, no. And I said, are you 100% heterosexual? I said, I don't think so. And you would have thought there were eyeballs popping on the other side of the glass going, and I said, I don't think so. And it was like, everything was slow. The birds quit chirping. Airplanes stopped in midair. You could hear the skidding of cars coming to a complete halt outside, waiting to hear this answer. I said, I don't think so. I think I'm 95% heterosexual. I think I'm 3% metrosexual because I wear Tommy Bahama shirts occasionally. And I'm 2% homosexual because I'd kiss Keith Urban if I had the opportunity to. I thought it was funny. I thought, in my mind, in slow motion, I'm going, God, how did you ever come up with that? That's probably the most profound thing you've ever said, and I'm going, in my mind, it was like I was at Wrigley Field in Chicago, just knocking it over the fence, and I could see the ball go, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you hear is, and the weather in Chicago is, and they take it off the air immediately, and the president of Moody Radio is banging on the window. Everybody's in complete shock. And he goes, you can't say that. You can't say that. You're on live radio. You cannot say that. And everybody in the room started going like this. And I just went, guys, let me tell you something. If you don't lighten up, you'll never be able to talk about the hard subjects that we need to talk about. And I just kind of sat down. The weather guy goes, well, it's a little stormy in Chicago. And I would say that somewhere in the midst of developing relationships and doing this thing with coming up with rules and doing this thing here with saying, this is how we're going to deal with the issues. It's almost like, we're going to do this. By golly, we're going to have a friendship. And you better accept this. And you're going to deal with these problems. Rather than entering into it with a little bit of lightheartedness. And I would tell you that some of you are a little bit too tight. You're wound too tight. You got to relax. You got to loosen up. You just got to loosen up. Somebody asks me all the time, how do you live with 60 high school kids? And my first answer is, well, I drink a lot. And that's not true. But the answer is this, I've learned to laugh. I've learned just to look at it as, because I know where we're headed. I know where we're going to get. I know where we're going to go. So cuss at me all you want. Tell me to do all those things. Do whatever. I really don't care because I know where we're going to end up, and it's going to be a good place. And my encouragement to people all the time is quit being so strict. I don't know why we're so strict all the time. Be a little bit more permissive in allowing some things as a training opportunity. And of course, use your head. Don't expose them to things that are going to hurt them or have the potential of hurting them. But we do. We give them car keys. Here, why don't you take this 5,000-pound piece of metal that'll go 120 miles an hour and get out there and drive on 5. We do, and what happens? They do pretty good. They learn. A few fender benders. And they're going to do that. They're going to wreck the car, don't you? That's why you bought insurance. What you're doing is betting the insurance company. Look, I'll give you a few $100 a month because I'm betting she's going to wreck that car. And if she does, you're going to pay for it. And the insurance company going, that's a good deal. We'll do that. That's going to happen. So it shouldn't surprise you. And so it's a part of saying I can relax a little bit, lighten up a little bit, have fun, talk about stuff that we need to talk about, sit around the table and not be so cloaked that you can't deal with the realness of the world, and just lighten up and have some fun. Learn to laugh. Somewhere, learn to laugh. I measure a church by the amount that they laugh. Laughter is another form of worship. I guarantee you this, if they're not laughing somewhere, then that church is going to be dead. It is. I was speaking at Duck Dynasty Land and down in West Monroe, Louisiana, and this 85-year-old lady came up to me afterwards, and she goes, this on a Sunday morning where I kind of combine everything into 30 minutes, and she goes, we haven't laughed like that in 45 years. Then another man came up to me and said, hey, Mark, I've always found this. You can always throw a bigger brick if it's wrapped in humor. And that would be my encouragement to you. This is a little bit of a game that we're playing. And the stakes are high. But it's a little bit of a game. You got to play the game, but you can relax because of the position that you're placed in. And that position is one of power. It's not that you're just exerting your authority like crazy, which I'll talk about in Tough Guys and Drama Queens. But it's the position that you have. It's the position of a relationship that becomes key. You follow me on that? Okay, here's the second part of the story, and we'll quit on this. We were outside of Nashville in Franklin, Tennessee, in a little place called Leaper's Fork. And you've been there, and Jake. And Leaper's Fork is a lot of artists live out there, and we do a lot of stuff with artists and songwriters and stuff. And so we were in a studio recording our stuff, and we took a break at lunch and went to a little tiny sandwich shop that was no bigger than this area, basically. Here's the counter, little tiny area like this, and the four of us over here eating, and guess who walks in? Keith Urban. One of our guys goes, well, Mark, there you go. And so I walked up to him and Nicole. I said, hey, I said I was like 95 and 3% and one thing and 2% that I'd kiss you if I had the opportunity. And he just looks at me and goes, well, that ain't going to happen. Got to learn to lighten up. Got to learn to lighten up. It makes the medicine goes down. The medicine will go down a lot smoother and sweeter by doing that. We're going to give people some time to eat lunch, either Mediterranean or Bohemian. And is that right? And then, Jake, you tell us what to do. Then we'll come back and we'll answer questions during that time. But I want to finish out by really touching on the stuff with the Tough Guys and Drama Queens, because it's very practical things that you can do, even though we'll talk about a lot of it during the times that we're answering the questions. See y'all in just a minute.